Hey everyone, it's Charlene. May is the beginning of Hero Art's 50th anniversary celebration, and they have a super fun birthday themed kit for May. This is the classic kit, and there's also a premium kit, which I'll show you in just a moment. But starting out here, we have these beautiful floral cake clear stamps. You have this lovely cake, candles, and some really pretty sentiments, and then of course the coordinating dies. There are also 6 sheets of Luxe White watercolor paper, really high quality. As a special bonus this month, you have the Message Clear Stamp Set, as well as the coordinating dies and the Yay Fancy die. So lots of extra goodies this month. There is also a full-size pad of Hero Art's contour ink. This is great for no-line coloring, watercoloring, all kinds of different things. A watercolor palette, a water flow brush. Lastly, pictured here, there's an ink swatch palette. It's a sheet of 8 colors of watercolor paints in the core ink colors. The premium kit includes everything I showed you from the classic kit, but it also has this beautiful balloon background stamp, as well as some gorgeous sequins here in champagne. They come in a variety of colors in there, as well as the Hero Hues enamel stickers. Lastly, there's also some special gifts with the premium kit. There is a Yay clear stamp and coordinating die, as well as this beautiful Congrats fancy die. That has a shadow, which is really nice for techniques. For this first card, I'm going to do some no-line coloring with the contour ink, and I'll be using that gorgeous cake stamp set. I'm going to stamp these out, making sure I get a very good coating of the contour ink on there. This is going to show up as a super light gray, and it kind of fades back as it dries. So you want to make sure that there is enough of a stamping that you're going to be able to see the lines. That way, when you color and add in your alcohol ink or your colored pencils, it's going to look like you hand drew these images. So if it's not quite dark enough for you, you can always come back in and do a second stamping. That's what I'm doing here because I want it to be a little bit darker so I can see it better. There's all those faint gray lines from the contour ink, and I find it really helpful when I'm coloring to keep the stamp set nearby. That way I can reference it if I need to. So I'll start out by coloring in all of the florals in shades of pink, purple, and blue. I'm just using one color. I'm not doing any shading with the alcohol markers because I'll use my colored pencils for that. These images are really small and it would be hard to do with the markers for me. I'm going to come in with purple for a few of the flowers. Change my mind, want to use a lighter purple here. Now I'm going to come in and color a few light blue, and then I'm going to bring in some blue violet, so we'll have a nice trio there. I'll bring in a yellow green to color all of my leaves, and for my strawberries I'm bringing in a light red. For the cake I'm going to bring in some cool grays. I'll start by coming along the edges of the cake, and I'm using CG1 to do that. Next, I'm going to bring in my CG0 and I'm going to pull in from the sides, and that's going to create the illusion of some curvature to the sides of that cake. For the top layer of frosting that's underneath those florals and strawberries, I'll come in with my CG1 right along the edge, and again using the CG0 just to fill in that area and pull out the CG1. For the cake plate, I want it to look silver. I'm going to start with my cool grays here. I'll be coloring the entire thing at first with CG0. Next, I'll come in with some CG3 and I'm going to pull in from the side, and then I'll bring in my CG1 to pull that CG3 out and bring it in even more. Once I'm done, I'm going to bring that CG0 again over the entire thing. For the centers of my flowers, I'm going to bring in some yellow and some dark yellow orange here. So here's the basic coloring. You can see where I filled in everything. Now I can bring in my colored pencils to add that extra bit of shading. I'm going to start with blue, coming in and adding a few details to these roses here. I'm not following any particular lines here. I'm just adding some little curved details where I think they're going to look nice. Once I finish with the blue flowers, now I'll come in and color in my violet flowers. And now on to our lighter pink florals. This is the violet, now my strawberries, now my leaves. And I'll bring in an orange yellow here for the centers. Add a little light brown. And then for the edges, I'll bring in some light gray. Then a darker gray in order to really darken up those shadows and make those shadows more pronounced. Okay, that's about the extent of my no-line coloring skills at this point in my life. I am going to come in here with some silver colored pencils just to really define our cake stand and make it nice and shiny. I'll bring in a little more of this dark gray as well. Next, I can cut everything out with the coordinating dies. I'll come in here with some Intens-ified Black Ink and ink up one of the sentiments. I'm stamping this along the bottom of a piece of antique white cardstock, and I'll have the cake and cake stand sitting just above this. I'm pressing very lightly because I don't want to lose any of my line work from the stamp, but I am going to double stamp so that I can make sure it is nice and dark. There we go. Now I can glue this to a piece of passion flower cardstock. It's a nice light purple. It's going to go really well with the purple flowers from our image. I'm going to be careful and make sure I have an equal border going all the way around. Now I can add the glue to the back of my cake and my other cake plate piece and place that down so that there's a little bit of gap between the sentiment and the cake and equal distance on each side of the card. I am going to bring in my white colored pencil. These are awesome to have on hand so I can add a few accents and lighten up a different few areas of the flowers. I could add some bling to the background of this card, but I'm actually going to just glue it right to my card base and let the coloring speak for itself on this card. Line up those corners here, and now I can close. And that is going to finish off our first card. I love all of that beautiful no-line coloring. The sentiment on the inside is a nice touch. I think this turned out really nice. For our second card, I'm going to be doing some multicolor stamping. So I have a piece of watercolor cardstock in here because we're going to use some water with this. I'll start out here with pink. This is Taffy Reactive Ink. I'll come in and I'm going to get the top portion of the stamp. I want to make sure that top portion is good and covered before I flip over my top plate and press down. Now I can lift and flip, and I'll do a second coat of the pink here. Once I get some good coverage, I will flip and press down again, lift my plate, and now I'll come in with yellow. This is Lemon Drop, and I'm going to bring this along the middle portion of the stamp up and over where the pink was, so that way we're going to get some blended orange in that area. Now I'll flip and press and lift, and you can see how that yellow has worked its way into the pink and made orange. I'll do a second coat of yellow here in the exact same spot. Now I can flip and press, lift. Next I'll come in with some purple. This is Thistle, and I'm going to bring this up the tiniest little bit on the bottom here, about an inch. Once I get that covered with ink, I'll flip and press down and lift. And now I'll bring in some nice light blue. This is Splash right along that strip. I don't want it to go too far up or I'm going to lose some of my yellow. So I do want it to combine and make green, but I don't want to lose a lot of it. So I'm just using the side of my ink pad and tapping very quickly here and there all along that strip where I want the blue to be. So now there'll be a nice purple fade at the bottom, but we'll flip, press, and then we can lift the plate. You see how that fades there in from the purple to the blue to the green, and we have this nice rainbow array here on the front of the card. For this next part, I'll put a little bit of water here on my work surface, and I'm going to bring in a paintbrush. You also could use a water brush here. And I'm going to go all the way around each of the balloons and work that ink from the edges of the stamp into the center of the area. So that ink gets pulled from the sides of the balloon and it's going to lightly color in the image. This will create a really beautiful effect. I'll do it with all the balloons. Did my first 2 rows, I can move on to the next row and the next row. Set that aside to dry for just a minute, and now that it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and cut it down with one of the Hero Arts Infinity dies. Next, I'll take that Congrats shadow and I'm going to cut this from the center of our cut down piece. I want to make sure and tape this down because I don't want it to move while it's running through my die cutting machine. Next, I'll take the letter portion of the Congrats die and I'm going to line this up in the center of the piece we cut out. And then I will do the same exact thing with the exclamation point. Next, I'll take that same size infinity die, which is the 5th from largest, and I'm going to cut it from a piece of Amethyst cardstock. Now I'm going to take this piece that we cut the shadow from and I'm going to add the glue to the back, and then we'll glue it right down on top of that piece of Amethyst cardstock. You want to make sure to get into all of the little inset pieces so that way this whole piece lays nice and flat on your card. Now I can glue the top down going around the edges until it lines up. Then I'll take the word die cut and I'll add glue all around on the back of this and line it up so that there's equal spacing all the way around. I also want it to line up seamlessly with the stamped image, so I'm paying attention to where all of those balloon lines are and just following along with my piece where those lines are so it looks like a nice perfect match. I'll do the same exact thing with the exclamation point. I'll come in and add glue to the back and then put it centered right inside that shadow area where it was cut out from. Now, if you want to, you could save all of your inset pieces here that were cut out and make a second card. You won't be able to tell that they're really balloon shapes, but it is a fun rainbow color and would look nice on the front of a card. So you could get a 2-for-1 here. Nothing quite like opening a brand new roll of foam tape. All I can think about is all the card possibilities. Now I'll peel down the release tape from the foam tape I added to the back. I'll do that about halfway down. It's going to help me to line this up on the card panel and make it nice and straight because those pieces act like kind of a little spring. It'll keep it from flattening down until I press on the top portion. Once I get it where I like it, I can flip it over and quickly pull off the rest of the release tape, and that will lay right down and be nice and centered there on the front of our card. And the last thing I'll do here is bring in some of the Hero Hues enamel stickers from the kit. I've made 2 triangles here and put them placed around the Congrats word die, and that finishes off our lovely second card. There are also several different add-ons with this month's release. This is the Sparkle Weave stencil, very pretty for backgrounds. The Dancing Lines stencil, I love all of those different fun shapes there. Sunburst Flowers bold prints, Bubble Celebration bold prints. This would look so nice in blues. Hooray birthday cover plate. This is like a little confetti and this looks like dripping icing. The Balloon Bunch Fancy Dies, and the Your Day Messages stamp set. I'm going to make a card using these add-on items as well. I've cut out each of the balloons from the Balloon Fancy Dies in a variety of colors, as well as the whole piece and the bow in black cardstock. Now I'm using my embossing ink here, and I'm going to cover up all of these pieces. I'm using a foam tool. It helps to make sure the cardstock is entirely covered with that embossing ink. If you don't have a foam tool, you can smoosh the ink pad directly onto those die cut pieces. I'm going to move all of my pieces over to the clean side of my paper that doesn't have any embossing ink on it. And then I will cover all of these pieces with clear embossing powder. I'm just going to pour it right over all of those pieces and leave it in a nice pile. Using my reverse tweezers, I can pick up each piece and dip it in to make sure I have good coverage, and then come in with my heat tool to melt all of the embossing powder. And I'll do this several times because I want to get a really thick coating of embossing powder on here. Every once in a while, I do move my tweezers around so that way I can make sure all of the spots are getting filled with the melted embossing powder. And now I have a nice thick layer on there. You see it's super shiny and nice. I cleaned up all of that embossing powder, and now I can come in and glue all of these pieces into their coordinating spots on top of the black balloons. For our sentiment, I'm using the Hooray birthday cover plate. I'm going to cut this out of the center portion of the cover plate with black cardstock, and then I will trim all these pieces down. Now I can glue all the way around the back and adhere this sentiment piece that I trimmed out to a piece of white cardstock, trim off the excess, and then cut the two words in half. Next, I'll put glue on the back of my entire balloon piece, picking it up with my tweezers and carefully placing it on the front of an A2 sized card panel right in the center. I'll put an acrylic block on top while this is drying. Now I can add glue to my center of my bow and put this right where all of those strings meet down at the bottom. And then I'll glue my sentiment right down over the tops of the balloons. I'm gluing my sentiment towards the top third of the card, and I'll glue the happy. I can put an acrylic block on there again just to help it dry. And then once dry, I glued the entire thing to my card base. So that'll finish off our card. Oh, all of that shine and dimension from those balloons is so cool. I mean, those balloons, they kind of almost look like candy. You know, I want to just pick one up and eat it. But to recap, we did our no line coloring with the classic kit. We did some watercoloring with the premium kit. And lastly, we used the balloon add-on die to create this fun three-dimensional birthday card. All right, guys, I hope you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.